Hello, I am the H-Town Vet, and I would like to welcome you to our channel, a place where we will discuss a variety of benefits available to veterans and their dependents. Today's topic, the VA Disability Code Sheet. Our goal here at the H-Town Vet is to keep things simple, and that's just what the VA Code Sheet does. Let me try to explain the importance of a code sheet by using an historical example. Until recent times, the ancient language of the Kemet or Egyptians was a mystery. Then scholars were able to find the Rosetta Stone and break the code. As a result, they were able to find out the status of King Tut, his father Akhenaten, and his grandmother Queen Tiye. In other words, they were able to break the code and find out the historical relationships between these important figures. But we here at the H-Town Vet are trying to help you break other codes, those on the VA Disability Code Sheet. Just like our historical example, status is important, but this time we're dealing with your health status. You may ask the question, H-Town Vet, what does status have to do with my VA disability compensation? Well, as it relates to the VA, it means everything. In fact, you cannot even receive VA disability compensation unless you have the right status. When the VA rater is completing your code sheet, they have to answer several questions to include, is the veteran service connected? If so, the condition and the diagnostic code number related to it. Then the rater needs to determine the combat code status. Another important status is, do you have any future examinations? We will continue to use the hypothetical Mr. John Brown as our example. Mr. Brown's code sheet was completed by a VA employee called a Decision Review Officer, or DRO. While this is a very important and powerful position in the appeal process, most of us as veterans never really understood their responsibilities. And the only way you can really understand somebody's work responsibilities is to understand their job description. So what is a decision review officer and what do they do? A DRO is a senior level VA employee, and they handle a veteran's claim once the appeal has been denied. The VRO's main role is to review the VA decision letter, the evidence that was considered, and VA law to ensure a proper decision was given. A veteran can request a DRO if their appeal is denied or they believe that they're entitled to a higher percentage rating than they were awarded. Now that's enough background. Let's get to the code sheet. We're going to highlight the part of the code sheet that we're covering on each slide. We're going to start with the VA employee that completed the document, the DRO. The Decision Review Officer is part of the appeal team at the VA Regional Office. So why did Mr. Brown pick the DRO? If I would have to guess, it's because they usually give faster decisions, and decisions at the Board of Veterans' Appeal are taking years. Back in 2014, when Mr. Brown filed his appeal, it was called a Notice of Disagreement. Once he filed his Notice of Disagreement, he had 60 days to request a Decision Review Officer to go over his claim. In my opinion, this was a smart move on Mr. Brown's part. Even if he gets an unfavorable rating from the DRO, he can still file the appeal. Because the DRO has more experience than the average VA rater, this can work on the veteran's behalf. Because the DRO has enough experience to specialize in these type of cases. In addition to the evidence considered in the original appeal, you can submit new and material evidence to help in your case. When it comes to appeals at the regional office level, there are two options. Either you can get a rating team to review it or the DRO. So you might be asking, what should I do? The first thing you need to do is get informed before you choose either option. But the faster decision usually comes with the DRO because they're more experienced and you're only dealing with one person. The date on your code sheet is the date that your packet was sent out, and it included the decision letter, the VA notification letter, and the code sheet. Mr. Brown's packet was mailed November the 20th, 2015, so that you can have an idea of what the letters in Mr. Brown's packet looked like. He received his decision letter telling him what the VA decided. He received his notification letter telling him of important dates and benefits that he's entitled to. And he received his code sheet telling him about important codes as it relates to his VA disability compensation. If this video has been informative so far, please like, share, and subscribe. Then we see the document has Mr. Brown's personal information, to include his name, social security number, and claim number, which is the same as his social security number. Then we learn that Mr. Brown was represented by a service organization, which was the American Legion. Mr. Brown served in the U.S. Armed Forces from October 21st, 1988 to October the 20th, 1992. And his branch of service was the Army, where he received an honorable discharge. When Mr. Brown received his first code sheet, he found contradictory information. This is because his combat code was 1. Well, let's break the first code and find out what really went wrong as it relates to Mr. Brown's code sheet. If a veteran has a combat code of 1, that means that they have no combat disabilities. This code designation is problematic in Mr. Brown's case because further down on the document, it says service-connected, Gulf War incurred. Immediately, Mr. Brown submitted a written letter highlighting the error and explaining to the VA what he wanted done to correct the problem. Then he backed up all of his demands with evidence and VA law. He did this by using other VA documents and medical records to show that his disabilities occurred and was a result of his service during the Gulf War. While this seems like a simple fix, there's nothing easy or simple when you're dealing with the VA. Now that we have an updated copy of Mr. Brown's rating code sheet, let's discuss the 4 codes that reveals a veteran's combat status. Code 1 are for veterans that have no combat disabilities. Code 2 are for veterans with 1 or more combat disabilities, and all are compensatable. If you look to the right on Mr. Brown's ratings code sheet, you will notice that the number 2 is highlighted. This means that Mr. Brown has at least 1 combat disability, and he can get compensated for it also. Number 3, veterans with 1 or more combat disabilities, and none of them are compensatable. I know you might ask the question, H-Town vet, how can I have combat disabilities and none of them are compensatable? That doesn't make sense. When the VA says that a veteran has a 0% non-compensatable rating, they're saying that the veteran does have a service-connected condition, but that it does not cause symptoms that affect the veteran's employment or quality of life. To make it plain, if your condition does not affect your ability to work or your personal life, it may be connected to your military service, but they will not compensate you for it. Number 4, veterans with 1 or more combat disabilities, but some of them are compensatable and others are not. What that means is some of them affect your ability to work and other ones don't, and the ones that don't are not compensatable. As a side note, and to be clear, there are some service-connected disabilities that are combat-related, and there are some service-connected disabilities that are not combat-related. You need to understand that non-compensatable means that you're service-connected, they're just not paying you for it. For more information on non-compensatable disabilities that are combat-related and that are non-combat-related, watch our video, The Advantages of a 0% Rating. In the section designated Future Examination Date, Mr. Brown has no future examinations scheduled, and it says none. We will explain why this is the case a little further down the rating code sheet. But let's say in this section on your code sheet, future examination date, there's an actual date. What do you do then? For example, for your future examination date, they may have June the 19th, 2025. If you see an examination date on your code sheet or any of your VA documentation, you would be advised to keep track of it and find out more information of where the examination is going to take place and at what time. And finally, you need to attend the examination because your benefits can be reduced or you may lose them altogether. In the section labeled Jurisdiction, we find that Mr. Brown's Notice of Disagreement or Appeal was received on August the 15th, 2014. This date is extremely important. It's because it's the date when his back pay starts and the start of benefits for his dependents. The next section is Associated Claims, and it has some codes that we need to go over. The first code is a number, 174, and it's a reference to a hearing that was conducted by the DRO on April the 21st, 2015. Apparently, Mr. Brown was not required to attend this hearing. The second code is in letters, DRAS, or DRAS, and it stands for Disability Rating Activity Site. The next section, Subject to Compensation, lists the conditions that a veteran is service-connected for, whether they are combat-related or non-combat related. In Mr. Brown's case, he's only service-connected for one condition, post-traumatic stress disorder. He also has non-service connected disorders. For example, he was denied and has a non-service connection for chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS. When we say service-connected, we mean disabilities or injuries that are connected to his military service. When we say non-service connected, we mean disabilities or injuries that are not connected to his military service. Now it's time to break another code. 9411 is the diagnostic code for post-traumatic stress disorder. Mr. Brown has PTSD with depressive disorder, NOS. The NOS stands for Not Otherwise Specified. In this case, Mr. Brown's depression is not rated separately from his PTSD, and in this case does not have its own diagnostic code. There is an important thing you need to understand about mental health ratings. While you may be diagnosed with several different mental health disorders, you can only get compensated by the VA for one, and that will be the one that's the most severe. In Mr. Brown's case, it's his PTSD. This section also mentions medical evidence and the veteran's evidence for his PTSD. During his time in the military, Mr. Brown was an armored crewman, or a tanker, and he served during combat operations during Desert Storm and had several traumatizing experiences that caused his PTSD. This is reflected on the code sheet with the statement that says, service-connected, Gulf War incurred. Mr. Brown's condition is considered to be static. Once the VA determines a disability to be static, it will be considered permanent in nature in most cases. This means that the condition is not likely to improve. And, as stated earlier on the code sheet, no future exams are scheduled. According to the rating sheet, Mr. Brown's current rating is 100%. But what I like about the code sheet is that it breaks it down through time periods and ratings. Mr. Brown's first compensation rating was 30% and was awarded back in 2005. Next, he was awarded 50% back in 2007. Next, he received a 70% rating in 2010. He finally received a 100% rating August the 15th, 2014. But you must understand, this only covers his scheduler ratings, not his combined ratings. His combined ratings we will cover in the next section. In the section Combined Evaluations for Compensation, we find out that Mr. Brown was awarded a temporary 100% June 19th of 2010. IU was awarded a month after Mr. Brown received his 70% rating. In fact, the 70% rating is the reason Mr. Brown was able to apply for unemployability. The reason Mr. Brown was able to file for IU is because he had one service-connected disability rated at least 60% or higher at the time he applied. Once he received individual unemployability, it qualified as a combined rating because he was still 70% but paid at the 100% rate. Not all of Mr. Brown's claims were approved. In the section labeled "Not Service Connected, Not Subject to Compensation," Mr. Brown was denied for chronic fatigue syndrome and oil well fire explosion. Even though both of these conditions were denied, March 24, 2004, the condition's diagnostic codes were still attached. Now we have a surprise for you. There's an important piece of information that's revealed on this document that you would never receive on any other VA paperwork, and that is the identity of the VA employee who completed your decision review letter. This is the main reason this document is so hard to obtain. Not only were we able to verify Mr. Brown's status based on his rating code sheet, we were also able to verify the identity of the individual that completed the document. We have over 30 videos in our library that covers a variety of veteran topics that you may find helpful, and we would like to thank you for joining us.